One of the popular picks for a team to sneak into the playoffs in 2015 was the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of people thought they would win 9 or 10 games, be in the mix for the wild card in the NFC, and maybe get in as the 6th seed. And I was of that opinion as well, as I looked at it and I said, you've got a team that I know is well coached under head coach Mike Zimmer. This is a team with a defense that has some talent that is improving, will have another year of continuity in his system. They're only going to get better. Now they'll get Adrian Peterson back, combined with another year in the growth and development of Teddy Bridgewater. I thought the formula was set for this to be a potential playoff team. I thought 9 wins was a given, and I thought 10 wins was a probability. I was right, and I was wrong. Not only did the Minnesota Vikings find a way to stay in the playoff mix all year, they didn't backdoor that shit. Come Week 17, they're playing Green Bay in Lambeau Field with a chance to win the NFC North, and lo and behold, wouldn't you know, the Minnesota Vikings get it done. They didn't go 9-7. They didn't go 10-6. They went 11-5. They won the NFC North and made a hell of a showing in that freaking Freezer Bowl game against the Seattle Seahawks at home in the wild card round. And frankly, unfortunately, if it wasn't for a missed Blair Walsh field goal from like 29 yards away, the Minnesota Vikings would have actually won a playoff game this year. You know, maybe they would have gotten blown out in the next round. That's a possibility. But maybe they wouldn't have. You never know. So it's a disappointing end to what, frankly, was a really, really good season for the Minnesota Vikings that should still leave this organization hopeful for the future and give them plenty to build on for 2016. Because a lot went right. Like I said, this was a team that we were expecting maybe to backdoor into the playoffs. You know, Green Bay was going to be the class of the division, and maybe this team could win 10 games to get the 6th seed. No, they didn't backdoor any goddamn thing. They won 11-5, man. NFC North champions. You know, they ended the Green Bay Packers' 4-year stranglehold on the freaking division title. It was the Vikings that got it done, not the Bears, not the Lions. It was the freaking Vikings. They did it with a second-year quarterback, you know, with a head coach in his second season who has some of the personnel he wants to run the system, but he doesn't have all of it. I mean, that's impressive shit, man. I go, hats off to them. They deserve it. You know, Adrian Peterson coming back into the fold for an entire season was certainly a big factor. Talk about a guy that ran for almost 1,500 yards. He won a rushing title again, 11 touchdowns. You know, he looked at many times like the AP of old, even if he was, for those yards, a little bit more reliant on the big play than he has been in years past. Still, at the end of the day, there was a clear-cut difference in the formula of success for that team. Now that you had Adrian Peterson in the backfield, you feel good about not having to throw the ball a ton, or not expecting a lot of big plays out of the passing game, and still being able to win football games at the NFL level. Defensively, you look at Harrison Smith, to me, arguably the best safety in the National Football League. Dude is a beast. You know, when he's on the field, which he can get those nagging injuries and miss a couple of games this season, but man, when he's on the field, he could do everything. He's great in coverage. He's great in run support. He's good as a blitzer. He's got tremendous instincts, great awareness, nose for the football. Just an incredible dude. You know, a playmaker, a guy that can force turnovers, just outstanding stuff. And then you look at Everson Griffin, another really productive year for this guy, 10.5 sacks. A lot of us, and I know I did especially, when this team gave him huge money before the 2014 season, I'm like, why in the fuck would you do that? What in the hell has this guy ever done? Well, it shows me what the fuck I know. This guy's had 2 pretty good seasons back-to-back now. I think if you're the Vikings, you also got to feel hopeful about the 2015 draft class, you know, because ultimately as a team, your best path to success is building through the draft, getting that young talent, growing them, developing them, getting them familiar with your system, because it's cheaper to do it that way as opposed to bringing players in via free agency or trade. You bring them in through the draft. That's the best way to success. You look at this 2015 draft class, and it was pretty good and has a chance to do even more going forward. Now, they didn't get a lot out of Trey Waynes, and the jury's still out on whether or not Trey Waynes is going to be a good pick or not, frankly. We'll see what happens in 2016. I'm sure he'll be given more of an opportunity. But you look at second-round pick Eric Kendricks. I really, really liked him coming out of UCLA. And I like him in the middle of Mike Zimmer's defense. I really, really do. Third-round pick Danielle Hunter. You know, he surprised me. He was more NFL ready than I thought. And, you know, he was a guy at times that played big as a situational type of pass rusher. And again, I think 6.5 sacks, third-round pick, bodes well for his future upside. T.J. Clemmings, fourth-round pick, ended up playing some at right tackle this year. He wasn't good, frankly, but he was a rookie. He probably wasn't ready to play right away. But, a guy that in the draft process, if it wasn't for the foot problem, might have been a second-round pick. They got him in the fourth round. Again, could bode well for the future. You could argue that their best actual pick out of 2015 in terms of his production on the field was Stephon Diggs. I liked him coming out of Maryland. A lot of draft experts didn't seem to like him very much. But, he looked like a guy that was cut in the mold of a big play, option for the future for Teddy Bridgewater and the Minnesota Vikings passing him. And, again, you got him in the fifth round. So you got some key contributors for the future in that draft that flashed some potential at times this year. That's good for the future of this team. Now, what didn't go well for this team? I'll start off with they only went 1-3 against the NFC West, and even that victory against the Rams was a close one. They barely won that game. That opening night loss to San Francisco was really, really bad. It just was really, really bad. Put it that way. In the grand scheme of things, did it really make much of a difference? No, because no matter what, they were going to be the 3 seed in the playoffs. But, they did go 1-3 against the NFC West. I don't feel Teddy Bridgewater progressed as much as he should have in year number 2. And let me get my soapbox here for just a second. I feel like at times Norv Turner's offensive philosophy is outdated, and it's a little too close to the vest, and it's way too conservative, and it's trying to protect the quarterback too much. And at some point in time, I know Bridgewater's kind of a game manager, but when you put him in such a system where you give him no choice but to be a game manager, I think you're studying his growth and development, and you're not allowing him to achieve his full potential, I should say. And there were times watching this team, Bridgewater barely threw for 3,000 yards this year. And he had 14 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And that's kind of misleading because he had that one game where he threw like 4 touchdown passes, ran for another one. I mean, Bridgewater can do more. I don't know if he'll ever be elite at the NFL level, but I think he can be really damn good. I think he's a quarterback you can win a lot of games with, and you can win some games because of. And they need to take the governor off of the offense a little bit, and they need to loosen the reins on Teddy Bridgewater a little bit because the way they were playing offensive football is not going to get the job done for them in terms of the big games. Now that you've gotten to the playoffs, you won the division, now it's about growth, it's about progression, it's about getting better, it's about taking that next step. And if they continue to play that kind of chicken shit scared offensive philosophy that I saw demonstrated consistently throughout 2015, you're just not going to get the job done to enough of a level to where you can go far enough. And I thought Bridgewater, frankly, to me, at least in the wild card round, outplayed Russell Wilson. And, he had that team in a position to win. He helped drive them down the field late in the game. He made some good decisions, made some nice throws. Give him a chance to do that more, because it'll be good for his growth and development. It'll be good for the growth of that offense. It'll also be good, too, because it'll take some of the responsibility away from Adrian Peterson. And as a result, you'll end up being able to save Adrian Peterson's body, and you'll get more mileage out of him for a longer period of time. I think it's a win-win-win. Just fucking do it. Stop playing so chicken shit on offense. I mean, because you're looking at it. This was a team that was 31st in the league in passing yards. They had 8 games where they scored 20 points or less. That's just not good enough. But ultimately, I think, for Vikings fans and the organization for that team, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how everybody involved recovers from that loss in the wildcard round. It's not the fact that they lost. It's not the fact that they lost at home. It's the fact that they lost at home in the manner that they did. Because they were the better team that day than Seattle. The Minnesota Vikings deserved to win that football game, in my opinion. And they just didn't. They just didn't get it done. Now, we can sit there and blame the kicker, because that's a play everybody remembers, but there are other things that factor in and all that. But that's a painful loss. And those are the types of losses that can even either galvanize an organization and they take that next step, or a team can internally crumble and fall apart because of it. And it'll be interesting to see going forward what this organization does. In terms of off-season priorities, first and foremost, I don't think they've re-signed Harrison Smith yet. I could be wrong. If they haven't re-signed him, then re-sign him. If they have, then just re-sign him again. Put another year or 2 on there. Don't fucking tell them about it. But then you got to look at that 2013 draft class and first-round picks like Sharif Floyd and Xavier Rhodes. They haven't become studs, but they're at least solid starters. And you can sit there and re-sign them and not have to break the bank to do so. And from a salary cap standpoint in this era of the NFL, it's very important when you draft those guys that you get them re-signed before they hit the open market, because if they hit the open market, who fucking knows what happens? You might as well consider them gone. If you want to keep them, don't mess around. If you want to keep them, get them re-signed now when they're 24, 25 years of age. That way you give them 3 years of big guaranteed money. They still got the chance to get another big contract for themselves at 28. In 3 years, you could potentially get out from under it, and it's not going to set you back too bad for too long. That's what you got to do. So I think as much as anything else, you got to take care of Harrison Smith if you haven't done so already. I don't think they have, but I could be wrong. If they haven't, then get it done. And if they have, I apologize, but get it done again. And then go after guys like Sharif Floyd and Xavier Rhodes and get them re-signed and keep them in the fold long term. And then turn your attentions to the NFL draft and help yourself improve on the offensive side of the football, because you got to get better on the offensive side of the football. One problem that they had offensively all year was their offensive line. They were really, really bad in pass protection. On the perimeter with Khalil and Clemmings, in the interior, they just really struggled to protect the quarterback. They really, really did. And for a guy like Bridgewater, he deserves better protection than what he's got. So in this draft, I would expect this team to look to address offensive line early and perhaps multiple times. And I would expect an offensive tackle to be in play for them, or a guard to be in play for them potentially at pick number 23. And if it's the right guy, it makes a lot of sense for him, because you've taken Bridgewater, you're building around Bridgewater on the offensive side of the ball. You got to protect him better. You got to do a better job of protecting him. If you want to help him achieve his full potential, then you've got to be able to protect your quarterback better, and that's just a fact of it. And all of the talk about the chicken shit offensive philosophy, part of it I do think in part ties into the struggles that the Minnesota Vikings had in terms of protecting their quarterback. Because if you can't pass protect worth a fucking damn on the outside or on the interior, there's only so much you could do. There are only so many types of plays that you can call. There's only a certain type of aggressive downfield philosophy that you could take, because the guy's just not going to have enough time to be able to go through his progressions and stretch the ball down the field. Just not going to happen. So offensive tackle, guard, those are need positions. Maybe at pick 23, if you ask me, for specific offensive linemen, maybe a guy like Jason Spriggs from Indiana, because Spriggs has left tackle potential in terms of his athleticism. Like Matt Khalil, are you really willing, if you're the Vikings organization, Vikings fans, to lock him up long-term to big-time money? I don't know about all that. And even if that's the case and you do, then maybe Spriggs is a big upgrade over TJ Clemmings at right tackle. You figure out somewhere else to play Clemmings, or you don't. But you got to get the protection better for him. Another possibility for them at pick number 23 is going to be wide receiver. Guys like Michael Thomas, guys like Braxton Miller might be names that you heard bantied about. Josh Doxson, perhaps, who knows? A wide receiver, I would expect a bigger wide receiver to complement Stephon Diggs, especially because I assume Mike Wallace is probably going to be let go in the offseason. A bigger wide receiver is going to be targeted either in round 1 or somewhere on day 2, whether that's round 2 or round 3, and it has to be. Because the Vikings are going to need that again if they want to take that next step offensively. I think they do need to address defense at some point in time. They're not necessarily looking for immediate impact, but they could use a better option to Harrison Smith at safety. Most NFL teams start 2 quality safeties or try to have 2 starting level safeties. The Vikings have 1 stud in Harrison Smith, and they have somebody who's not Harrison Smith. They could use an upgrade there at safety, but again, that could potentially be a day 3 pick. Same thing with an outside linebacker. We'll see whether or not Chad Greenway's retained. You've got Anthony Barr at one side, at outside linebacker. You've got Kendricks in the middle. You're pretty good at 2 of the 3 linebacker positions for years. It'd be nice if you got a more viable option long-term behind Greenway, whether he comes back for 1 more year or not. Either he doesn't come back and you've got somebody in the wings right away, or he does come back for 1 more year and then you've got somebody that's in the wings ready to take over in 2017. This draft is important. This offseason is important in a lot of different ways, because this Minnesota Vikings organization could, use this as a springboard, as a platform to take some big steps forward and show that this year was no fluke, or they can go in the opposite direction and let this get to them and not make the moves that they need to and address the areas they need to, and they could really start to nosedive, and this team could end up finishing, last in this division come 2016, and I mean that.